What's going on, you guys? Today is going to be on short-term versus long-term relationships. So if you're struggling with the pros and cons or just kind of what they look like, well, you found the right place. Now, before I go any further, I just want to let you know that I don't particularly endorse things like one-night stands, friends with benefits. I don't really believe in all that stuff, guys. That's a lot of red pill alpha pseudo garbage, okay? I think that if you've spent any sort of time in this sort of area, that granted, I don't know where you're coming from. Some people said that years back it didn't used to be this crazy, but today you're seeing a lot of just get as many women as possible, and that's how you're a man, and that's how you're going to be happy. And guys, I don't believe in that. I think that relationships are the foundation of who we are as humans, and I think there's definitely some negatives, there's definitely some cons to living that one night stand, that friends with benefits lifestyle, okay? It ends up being very unfulfilling. I know guys who have had a lot more women in their life than I've had, and they're able to pull women like crazy off of dating apps and in person, and just they're very social and they're very in tune with women. And guys, even these guys will tell me, like, yeah, it gets boring, it's unfulfilling. These guys, they want ultimately to have a family and a good woman, but they've, in a sense, bought into the lie that to get there, they have to run through a bunch of women and they have to live it up and they have to be a man. So, guys, again, I don't endorse that. If you guys want to go down that route, there's other channels, but this video and really this channel is going to be more on the concrete, the relationships, right? The things that matter. So if that's what you're looking for, again, you found the right place. So let's jump in, all right? Pros and cons of short-term versus long-term relationships. Now, how do you define a short-term relationship? Now, short-term relationship, guys, to me personally, all right, this might vary depending on who you're talking to, pretty much is going to be anything where you're seriously talking to someone in dating for like 6 months to a year. All right, that's going to be my sort of minimum threshold. Some people might say it's, a month or 3 months or whatever, right? My experience, unless you've really spent a significant amount of time with someone for at least 6 months to a year, you're really not going to know them super well. You can be in a relationship a month in, 3 months in. Wouldn't necessarily recommend that, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But guys, 6 months to a year, you have a really good understanding of that, okay, of what a relationship is. Really anything shorter, you're just finding out about that person. Now again, it depends how you define relationship, but again, that's just what I've experienced and just what across the board I've seen, okay? So long-term relationships, pretty much that's going to be anything past a year, all right? Again, you can go 6 months, really depends how much time you're spending with that person and what the goal of it all is. So again, we'll dive into that a little bit more as well. So let's talk about the pros and cons of a short-term relationship, all right? So again, that's going to be anything that's pretty much under a year, 6 months, whatever, right? That really, if you look at it, okay, a short-term relationship, the pros are going to be that you are going to be able to date more people, right? There's not going to be as much pressure, right? Maybe social pressure, family pressure to get married and things like that, right? Those are really the pros, right? It's just that they're shorter. They're less intrusive, they're less burdensome, right? Cons are going to be that they're not usually as serious, okay? And what I mean by that is that you're going to be in a position where you're not as able to form as deep of a relationship with somebody, okay? So if you're having relationships with people, back to back to back to back, yes, you might get a lot of experience, and honestly, up front, this might be a good thing, all right? Especially if you've never really been in a relationship before. short-term relationships they can be good. All right, depends on how you look at it. Ideally, everybody would just go on their first date and they would just find the right person, and they would never have to go through a breakup or split up or find somebody else, right? But that normally doesn't happen. So short-term relationships, guys, cons, you just don't really get that much time to get to know somebody and all that good stuff, right? Long-term relationships, on the other hand, let's talk about those pros and cons, and then we're going to compare how these two might look, okay? So long-term relationships, guys, the pros are you really get to know somebody, you really get to cement that relationship. Again, you're going over that 6 months to a year mark, you're going to get to know somebody pretty well. And I would say, honestly, guys, just for simplicity's sake, a year is when you're really going to know somebody. I know there's people who have found the forever person, a month or two in. That's awesome. But you really don't know who that person totally is until about that year mark. Again, that's just my opinion. So long-term relationships, again, you have a little bit more of stability, right? You're not really you're not really dating as many people. You're able to maybe bring those people around your family. You're able to develop a really good relationship with that person, right? They're going to be able to build you up. You're probably doing a lot of life stuff together, all that fun stuff, okay? Now, short term, or cons actually of this, I'm actually thinking back and forth, but the cons of these long-term relationships are going to be that you are going to be spending more time with one person. All right, so again, depends on what your outlook is, okay? So if you're with the wrong person, then a year might be a very, very long time with the wrong person, right? You might look back and go, oh my gosh. In a year, guys, I'm cutting it off there because that's when you really know, but I know a lot of guys, they've been in relationships for 2 years, 5 years, 7, 8, like you have some people in a relationship for a very long time. Okay, so again, if it's with the wrong person, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot. You can become very jaded or think you've spent so much time that you get into this sunk cost fallacy mindset of I spent so much time and effort with this person and you've done everything right, and you're just kind of like, I gotta pick it all up and I gotta restart and I gotta, if it doesn't work out, right? So those are some of the cons with long-term, guys. It's just that you're going to be in that relationship for a long time. You're not going to be dating other people. Again, it depends on your perspective on this. Now let's compare the two. We've kind of defined what those look like, but let's compare the two and what that might look like. So practically speaking, guys, short-term relationships are going to be your initial dating phases, right? You're going out maybe once a week. You're dating somebody, twice a week tops. Unless you have just a bunch of free time and you have it all together, I really don't advocate going out really more than like twice a week, just because that newness is going to kind of wear off. You got to have time to get to know somebody, and also you got to pull back and kind of see the situation for what it is. You got to get to know that person from a distance, right? There's that age-old saying that distance makes the heart grow fonder, and that's true. All right, for men and women, you got to back off, because sometimes you get so caught up in the dating, right, of what's in front of you, the fireworks and all that, that you become maybe obsessive or compulsive, and your whole life starts to kind of like revolve around that person. So again, guys, take of this what you might, but dating should be taken seriously, and just like pretty much anything else in life, you got to be able to schedule in these dates, right? So you got to be able to make these things a little bit more serious, and honestly, the only way to do that is to do that sporadically. And guys, I get it. Sometimes you might meet someone, you're like, oh my gosh, maybe you're in an environment where you want to see them every single day. Maybe you're in college. Maybe you guys are both on the same campus. Maybe you guys are like super close, right? You're always running into each other. But again, the best way to do it is to try to create some distance, okay? Try to create some distance. I'm not saying you cannot see that person more than twice a week. I'm just saying, Long term, you gotta have your space, they gotta have their space. And as that relationship gets stronger, right, you guys are together for longer, then eventually you're probably gonna be hanging out a little bit more, right? But 2 times a week is a good place to fall into. Now, when you're in these short-term relationships, guys, the idea isn't to be in short-term relationships, all right? And that's, again, my belief. But if you're in short-term relationships, then you're in this weird in-between phase of where you're trying to find long-term, and you're kind of stuck in this, you're just meeting people to meet them, right? I'm not here to judge. I'm just saying most of the time, people in short-term relationships, they're doing it because it feels good, because the fireworks, because, right, it's just very shallow. But if you're new to dating, this could be a good thing. Now, when you're in these short-term relationship kind of periods of life, you shouldn't be in them for too long, guys, right? I made a video on dating, how you know when she's interested and things like that. And the idea is that you're always going to want to escalate things, right? You don't want to just lay everything out there up front, right? But you also don't want to not be going anywhere, right? You got to have this gradual progression. And the idea is when you're dating, you know, my thing again is really the first 1 to 3 dates, you should know who this person is. You should really know if you're going to want to keep dating them. So if you're seeing them once a week, in less than a month, you should really know if this is a good person that you want to be with, or if it's better just to cut ties and go your own ways. What people fall into is this, I'm going to start dating a girl, I'm going to just take everything from it that I can, or I'm going to try to invest everything in it that I can, and somehow it's going to work out. Or I'm just going to have them there in my life because of XYZ, because of, I want them because of sex, or I want them because of how they might make me look socially, right? Maybe some people get embarrassed if they don't have somebody that they can take places or to events, so they have to have somebody in their life, right? Again, when you really start to go into these things, guys, once you work on yourself, you have a life that you're happy in, having somebody in your life doesn't become a huge priority. And that's why the 1 to 2 dates a week rule is really good, because if you're living a really fulfilling life, you're really not going to have a whole lot of time to be dating, right? So the people you do date, you're going to take a lot more seriously. So that's what it looks like when you're short-term relationships. It should be more of, really not even relationships, guys. It should be more of, you're getting to know these people. If you find yourself in a lot of short-term relationships, again, you should probably go back to the drawing board. You should probably work on yourself. You should probably try to be a bit more in tune with what you actually want long-term. Because the idea, guys, I mean, let's just be real, okay? I know there's going to be people who say they're outliers and some people aren't wired this way. But for a majority of people, we are wired to want to find one person and to build something with that person, right? You can call it a kingdom, you can call it a legacy, you could call it just a family, right? You could call it whatever you want, but we're wired to want to build with that one person. So don't waste your time, right? Again, if you're finding out you're just in a lot of short-term flings, then it's probably something to do with you. Take a step back, maybe stop dating, work on yourself, get a more fulfilling life. Then you're going to attract people who are more in tune with what you want, and things are just going to be a lot more natural, and long-term relationships should be, again, a lot more natural. So guys, that's how a short-term relationship might look. Long-term relationships, practically, again, pretty straightforward. You're going to be dating this person, you know, once or twice a week. Again, if this is like long-term, it's getting pretty serious. You know, again, these aren't hard and fast rules. It's just, again, what I said earlier, it's a general sort of dating mindset, okay? So maybe you start seeing this person a little bit more often, 3-4 times a week. The idea though, guys, and this is where a lot of people get stuck with long-term relationships, is they let the relationship go too long. Now, you should really be able to nip this in the bud with the short-term relationships, right? You shouldn't be getting to the point where you're just having back-to-back 1 to 2 year relationships and they're all ending up, not working out. The idea is to have as few of relationships as possible, because when you're committing to someone long term, you're basically telling them, hey, look, like, I really want you in my life. I really like the fact that you're in my life around my family, my friends, the different hobbies I have, the different things that I do and want to go through in my life. You're mutually saying, like, I like you as a person and I want to be here for the long haul, not just for a year or two, right? You don't want to be a serial long-term relationship person, okay? That's not the idea. So I know for some people that's how it happens. Maybe they don't fully understand themselves or dating super well. I get it. But you don't want to be caught in these like 5-year relationships back to back, okay? You want to eventually be able to settle down. And what that looks like, eventually, guys, again, you're going to know pretty quickly. If you watch my video on how you know if she's interested, you're going to know these things. You're going to know if you guys align on your values, your ethics, your future, end states, whatever you want to call it. You're going to know these things pretty quickly, okay? So don't get caught up in that, just the fireworks and how you make each other feel in one specific area, right? One area is not going to be able to be the bedrock, the foundation for your entire relationship with someone, okay? But long term, again, you want to escalate it. You want to get it to the point where it's like, okay, now you guys are talking like actually committing, actually being like, hey, let's talk about getting engaged. Let's talk about getting married, right? Let's talk about what a family really looks like. Let's talk about the everyday finances and the everyday schedule and what that looks like. Do you want to be a stay-at-home mom? Do you want to be a career type person? Would it be okay if like I was working 50, 60 hours a week? Is it cool if I'm working full time and then I'm also working on a side business? Do you want to go to the gym with me? Like all these different things you're going to have to really start to lock in. And again, this will come naturally. But the idea is, guys, especially once you reach that about 1 year mark, you want to have a pretty solid idea. Okay, is this person really just in it for the long haul, or am I just a convenience for them? Have I just been sort of a stepping stool, right? You really should know all these things. You should know them pretty well before a year. But to really understand somebody's character, to really understand who they are, it does take about a year, okay? Again, not a hard and fast rule, just sort of a guideline, okay? So, guys, once it comes down to it, I mean, is there a better way to date, or is there a better relationship dynamic? I mean, I would say that long-term, all the way, right? As few, you don't want to be dating people left and right. You just don't, it gets kind of old. But if you're newer to dating, if you find yourself in shorter relationships, it's not a big deal. But the goal is for that long term, okay? And you should know those people you're going to get into a long-term relationship with, like, they're going to be more loyal type of people. They're going to be people who are actually going to stick by your side, who want the best for you. What I see a lot of guys get into is these relationships where they put up with the person that they're with, okay? This goes for women too, but I'm a guy, so I'm talking to primarily guys here. It's gonna primarily come down to how loyal, how faithful, how serious this person is. And guys get so stuck. They find a woman, right? They find a girl who wants to be with them, but they never ask themselves why, and they never really stop and go, okay, well, is it just because maybe she's had a lot of short-term relationships and now I'm the only guy who wants to put up with her, so she sees me as being stable? Is she adding to my life? Is she seeking to add to my life? Because I'll be real with you guys, a lot of guys in long-term relationships, if they really step back and they really look at this thing, they're giving, they're sacrificing so much, but there's nothing coming back from her. There's no like true assistance there. She's not trying to help you level up. She's not trying to help you get further in life. She's not trying to work as a team. It's more like a one-sided, you're like the provider and she's getting all the benefits. Okay, don't be stuck in that mindset. Don't be stuck in that environment, in that relationship, guys. That's not going to be fulfilling. If you guys get married, it's going to be 10 times worse. But a lot of guys, when they're in that relationship, right, they get so stuck on the, I'm with somebody, somebody likes me, maybe they're okay with bare minimum, maybe they don't ever ask themselves these questions, right? And so just want you to be aware of that. So pros and cons, guys, I hope that helps. I hope that really kind of narrows things down for you. Again, it's not really a right or wrong answer. It just depends on where you are. But one more thing I want to add before I close off this video is, guys, I can't hammer this in enough, but I really want you guys to take this home. When you're in relationships, short-term, long-term, doesn't really matter, right? Because you're not going to know until a bunch of time has passed if something's going to work, all right? Don't just put up with somebody, right? Actually be building something with somebody. If you notice things up front that just aren't flying, that just aren't cool with you, right? You can bring them up. You can try to say, hey, look, I don't date people who do this. But ultimately, guys, most of the time, you're probably going to be cutting a lot of people off. Okay, it's going to be hard at first. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, you know, I put some time and effort into this. We know each other. She seems pretty cool. You're going to be like, I don't know if I can do this, guys. I promise, do it. Or else you're going to be caught in the crossfires the longer that it goes. It's going to be a lot tougher to walk away from. Okay, you don't want to be with someone who you think is like halfway into you or halfway in the relationship, and then find out that all those gut feelings, all those things that you saw, all those things you let slide end up being a mountain once it comes down to it. And what happens is a lot of guys, I'm going to be real with you, just aren't really strong enough to walk away. So they wait and they wait and they put up and they dig themselves into a bigger hole. And eventually the woman leaves them or uses them, basically chews them up and spits them out and moves on to the next guy. So don't be that guy. Know what you want. Know what your values are. Don't put up with anything less, right? Go for what you want. Make sure someone's on that page with you and build something and move forward together in step, all right? So guys, I hope that helps. Again, let me know if you got any comments, any concerns below, and I'll see you at the next one.